Hi.
We had.
Go ahead. Okay, hello, welcome everyone to the regular school committee meeting of the Little Compton School Committee on June 15th. If everyone could please rise for the pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we could just observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Moving on to 1.4, I would entertain a motion to enter an executive session under RIGL section 42, 46, 5A1 by way of roll call.
So moved.
Thanks. Do I have a second? Want a second? There we go.
Second.
Leon,
Aye.
Travis Audi,
Aye.
Hannah App,
Aye.
Peter Kenahan,
Aye.
Mike Rocha.
Aye.
All right, into executive session we go. Welcome back to open session. Sorry, welcome back to open session. I would like to notify everyone that there were no votes taken in executive session. And I would consider a motion to seal the minutes of executive session, please.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to remove from the consent agenda? Sounds good. All right, I would consider a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I would like to move, I think it's 9.1, let me double check. Yep, 9.1, independent contractor evaluation of proposals received in response to the high school contract request for proposal, up to the current time in the agenda so that our evaluator can move on with his evening. If that's okay with everyone.
He should be here in a second.
Oh,
Oh, you're just gonna get him.
okay. Well, a lot of monkey wrenches thrown in my meeting tonight.
I'm moving parts today.
Holy cow.
Like that. Silence. Dead silence.
Could I indulge you to move maybe down there so that the
Sure.
consultant could,
Sure.
that was just, unless you want to go down there though, is that okay?
I'm fine, anyway. Let's see.
Sorry, Travis.
No worries.
Leave your things with you. If your car's nicer than mine.
I don't think it is. The record show, I don't think.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Least I could do. Thank you for your.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
How you doing? Neil, very good.
All right, we have already moved 9.1 to the current
Okay.
place. We're ready to go. Want to give a introduction?
Do you want to introduce me and Mr.
Sure. Don Rebello has joined us tonight to actually go over, I should say, a evaluation of the 3 different bids that we've received from a high school RFP, and you would, Don, just take it from here. Just kind of describe what you've done and we'll do.
Did you want us to follow the same that we did for the 6 o'clock, the RFP, then the rubric, then the summary, and then the US News and World Report, but a little bit faster?
Yeah, we could do that if it goes.
It's up to you. All right. Oh, Jonathan's ahead of us, Mike. Mike Rocha is the chairperson of the school committee subcommittee of the high school tuition program for Little Compton kids. And so we had a 6 o'clock meeting of the subcommittee, which is Hannah, Mike, the chair, me, Jonathan, Cedric, John McNamee. And basically the same group that was together last year for the negotiations of the emergency extension. So what I want to do is just quickly talk about the RFP process. The RFP was sent to every public high school in within 20 miles of Wilbur McMahon School, whether it was in Massachusetts or Rhode Island. And we received 3 bids. And we used the New England Association of School and Colleges newest standards, the 2020 accreditation standards, as the format for the bid submittal. And Jonathan, could you go down a bit? Let's see. The NEAS standards, the rubric that we sent to each district is 33 pages long, and it covers learning culture, student learning, professional practices, learning support, learning resources, et cetera. And the proposals, the submittals had to include detailed evidence of meeting or exceeding all 5 NEAS standards and all principles of effective practices included in the attached rubric/evidence document. So we weren't looking at scores necessarily, a numerical value, though making it into a bilateral process of accreditation into a unilateral process. And, you know, a numerical score would not be a bad thing. But we're really looking at protecting the town's investment in its high school students. And that means ensuring that each high school that submitted a bid would meet or exceed NEASC standards for accreditation. We certainly don't want to spend over $1 million for our scholars and send them to a high school that could be losing accreditation or is on probation or something like that. And so the RFP was a couple of pages long, about 3 or 4 pages. It was pretty clear. The bids were to be hand delivered to me on a Friday. Seems like a long time ago. And they each were hand delivered. One superintendent hand delivered it himself. That was from Portsmouth. And those bids were shared with the independent educational consultant, Don Rebello, who comes with expertise unlike any other NEASC former principal that I've ever encountered. And he's been on several NEASC accreditation visits. He's led several teams. He was also a principal in 2 states and several high schools where he had to lead the accreditation process in that capacity. And he has spent several weeks, a lot of time and energy looking at the bids. The rubric, could you go to that very quickly, is 33 pages long. And I thought that the receiving districts would, push back a little bit on so much work, but they didn't. They received the challenge in the spirit that we wanted them to, and they, don't worry about it. And each of them reached out and said, thank you for designing the RFP this way, because it gives us a leg up on the accreditation process that we're all in the middle of anyway. And not one of them has been evaluated against the new standards, but they will be within the next few years, each high school. And so they did look at it as a very welcome challenge, a welcome endeavor to engage in. And so it's very long, very detailed, the scale of 0 to 4, and Don will go through a little bit more later. And I think it was a really good process. And each of them did follow the rubric, and with one exception, and Don Rebello, our consultant, will definitely go through that a bit more. Jonathan, could you put up the consultant's summary? Thank you so much. And could we share the consultant summary and the complementary objective data? Yes. If I may, I would like to take this opportunity, if anyone is watching the live stream at home, to thank all of the stakeholders who did come to the subcommittee's 6 o'clock meeting. It was very nice to see parents, guardians, and caretakers. It was a really good turnout for step 1 in the process, which is the data component. Not necessarily the stakeholder engagement component. So that was really, thank you, really heartening to see. Yeah, very encouraging. And it speaks to the right decision made last year by the subcommittee to wait a year. to do this when people could be in person rather than engage virtually. Dot, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Superintendent Dias-Smith, and greetings to the members of the Little Compton School Committee. You know that 3 schools submitted proposals. You see on the screen now the 5 current NEAS standards: learning culture, student learning, professional practices, learning support, and learning resources. As was just explained, the 3 schools were required to provide evidence of meeting these standards. So I'll just review and highlight some of the points, salient points in the report. Within each of the 5 standards, you probably are aware, are a series of principles of effective practice, and each of those define the expectations for a particular standard. During a NEASC accreditation visit, as most of you probably know, again, schools are asked to reflect upon and report their progress in aligning with the principles of each and every standard. Each standard also contains within each principle a series of descriptors of effective practice. And these are intended to serve as examples of what each principle looks like in practice, each of the principles under each of the standards. Furthermore, these descriptors provide guidance or are benchmarks that assist schools in aligning with each of the principles. As an example, Standard 1 is learning. In that standard, there are 7 principles of effective practice. Each one of those principles contains a number of descriptors of effective practice. Again, for purpose of example, here are the details for Standard 1, Principle 1.1 within Standard 1, and it reads as follows. The school community provides a safe, positive, and respectful and inclusive culture which ensures equity and honors diversity in identity and thought. So that's Principle 1.1. There are 8 descriptors and guidance benchmarks for the schools within this principle. And they are listed there, they are bulleted, they are as follows. The school community provides a physically, emotionally, and intellectually safe environment for learners and adults. The school community demonstrates a culture of learning focused on the strengths of both students and adults, being the teachers, staff members. The school community creates policies and protocols that define and support respectful treatment of all members of the school community. The school community ensures that all learners are known and valued and have equitable access to a full range of programs and services. That's really a highlighted and salient point.
Mhm.
The school community identifies learning gaps and social disparities and develops programs and initiatives to address them. The school community ensures individuality among all community members and provides a positive opportunity for extended learning and growth. The school community actively emphasizes and strengthens understanding of and commitment to equity and diversity. The school community supports a diversity of opinion and personal experience. So again, each district was required to provide evidence or commentary as to how they are complying with the standards for 25 of the selected principles. Provided was the form designated selected standard and principle, along with the descriptors of effective practice for each principle. That, of course, was in the rubric. And there was an expectation that there would be a certain amount of specificity applied by the school in detailing how they are meeting that standard. So I'm going to jump down to the scoring scale now, because you know the 3 districts are Middletown, Portsmouth, and high school who submitted. And by the way, each one of those school districts is familiar with the accreditation process, as Superintendent Dias-Mitchell mentioned, having been through it several times. So within the scoring scale, there was a possibility of earning a score of 1 through 4 for each principle, with 4 being the highest score, one being the lowest. The example provided earlier, standard one, has 7 principles of effective practice. Within it, 8 descriptors of effective practice. In the best case scenario, I should say, appropriately provided evidence illustrating how a school is meeting the standard as framed by each of those 8 descriptors would achieve the highest score of 4. In that the districts were required to react to the 25 selected principles of effective practice. The total highest score is 100. So just a few concluding remarks before getting into the scores. First of all, it goes without saying, but important to note here, that the evidence provided by each school would be and should be valid and verifiable. It's assumed that each point of evidence submitted by each school can be supported by them with honesty, integrity, and validity. I experienced many NEASC accreditation visits, and I have found that in a certain number of them, it's discovered with a certain level of consistency that some schools are unable to validate all of their claims and their statements of compliance as far as the components of each standard is concerned. In addition, and conversely, there are times when an accreditation visitation team may discover that schools have not appropriately documented and noted certain factors and conditions that would have significantly contributed to their accreditation ranking. This also occurs at times. I note these points here not because of any suspicions or misgivings at all, but only because rating and ranking schools is, as all of us know, not a perfect science, but it's sometimes contingent upon a number of and multitude of factors that may outlie or exist outside the realm of one simple rating process. Give you an example. If you view the U.S. News and World Report analysis of ranking of high schools in Rhode Island, you're going to observe a ranking that differs from the one summarized in this analysis and report. So here are the scores. Tiverton, 94 out of 100. Portsmouth, 88 out of 100. And Middletown, 82 out of 100. Some comments on each submission. The Tiverton School District was very, very deliberate and specific in providing evidence that coincided and aligned with nearly every descriptor of effective practice within each principle. Quite often, the statements of evidence exceeded the number of descriptors. For example, earlier in this report, I alluded to the fact that Principle 1.1 within Standard 1 contains 8 descriptors of effective practice. In Tiverton's case, they provided 15 statements of evidence that aligned well with each and all of those descriptors. And their submission was quite consistent in this regard in its entirety, and that they many times exceeded the number of descriptors in listing their complying evidence. The Portsmouth submission aligned well with most descriptors also. However, there were a few descriptors that were not touched upon. It was a solid submission, however, and Portsmouth High School remains recognized as a high-performing school. Earlier, I mentioned the U.S. News and World Report in Rhode Island, and the fact that it does not align with this analysis. Well, in that ranking, and I think Superintendent Dias-Mitchell is going to allude to it in a little while, in that ranking, Portsmouth is listed ahead of Tiverton and Middletown. Middletown submitted a substantial amount of documentation in their submission, along with a good amount of anecdotal data and information pertaining to school culture, student services, support services, etc. Their submission, however, was a little more challenging to score in that there was not an alignment narrative for each of the descriptors. Rather, for each descriptor, a variety of documents intending to validate compliance were listed without an explanatory narrative. A brief explanation or narrative detailing the connection and alignment to the descriptor would have been beneficial. This wasn't necessarily a bad approach, but at times alignment between the descriptor and the included documents lacked some clarity. Final remarks, just want to note again that any evaluation of a high school's efficacy in meeting the complex needs of all students may certainly be reduced to a high level of objectivity, but some subjectivity always enters the picture at some point. The methodology employed here, requiring a reflection upon the NEASC standards, is certainly one objective means of evaluation. We should keep in mind, however, that the legitimacy of this rating protocol assumes that each school in its submission has offered evidence statements and/or documentation of school supports that are being consistently and successfully implemented. If these supports are not in place and thriving, one's integrity would certainly be at risk. Therefore, assuming the best, I have confidence that I've appropriately scored each of the 3 submissions. And I'll just mention as a final remark that I think if you submitted these reports for analysis to 100 folks who are familiar with NEASC standards, that 99 out of 100 would rank the 3 schools the same way. The numbers might differ a little bit, but I'm very, very entirely confident that those rankings would be the same based on these 3 reports at this moment in time. So again, the scores: Tiverton 94, Portsmouth 88, and Middletown 82. And Superintendent Dias-Mitchell, I'll defer to you for the financial impact.
Thank you. So the financial impact is only 1/5, 20% of what the committee should, would consider for awarding the contract. 100%, 100 points for educational programming, which is academic, co-curricular, and extracurricular, and 25 points for financial impact. If we had 6, 7 or so bidders, we would go right down to 0. But the lowest bidder got the top points, and right to the top there, 25. The second lowest, Middletown, got 20. The third lowest was Portsmouth. And if Newport or Bristol Warren or Dartmouth, Massachusetts, or Westport, Massachusetts had also entered a bid, they would get some sort of points on that scale. But we only had 3 bidders. And Tiverton came in the lowest, obviously, at 9,500 for year 1 and year 2, with a 1% increase in year 3. This is going 10 years out, but with procurement laws the way they are, it's chunks of 3 years, 3 years, 3 years, and then 1. Middletown came in second, so they got 20 bonus points, 14,000 year 1, 2024, because the current emergency contract extension sunsets next year, June 30th, 2023. The current contract sunsets 2 weeks, June 30th, 2022. Thank goodness for the emergency extension, especially during the pandemic. And then the second year for Middletown, it's 14,210, and then 14,423. I didn't do the math, but I'm sure John McNamee is looking at a systematic increase there, percentage-wise. Portsmouth, we are ending this contract, I believe, at $10,500 in year 10. Our emergency extension is $13,500 per student. It's quite a leap. And there's a leap there also for year 1 of a contract in their bid, and it's $15,500. They are the highest bidders, obviously, and then 16, and then 16,500. Unlike an auction, the highest bidder does not get the highest amount of points when it comes to financial impact on a community. The lowest bidder does. So Tiverton came out with the highest number there as well. And the subcommittee, as well as the independent educational consultant, also wanted some objective data, some objective output measures. And I would assume as such, and I did, share that with you. So I did go to the US News and World Report data site and looked at their 2022 high school rankings. I organized the data for the subcommittee and the educational consultant. And I did select those data points that most parents, guardians, and caregivers of high school kids would be looking at when it came to selecting high school or evaluating a high school. And if we look at the 2022 data from US News and World Report, it reflects on the 2019-2020 school year. So it was a couple of years lag time between data submitted and or available and captured, and US News and World Report's always much anticipated high school ranking issue. And we look at Portsmouth comes out on top there. They're at 93.25 points on a scale of 0 to 100. Tiverton is at 78.28 points on a scale of 100, and Middletown 71.26 on a scale of 100. And in terms of state ranking by US News and World Report, and I did include the methodology for all the stakeholders up on the board doc site. Some of them were accessing that, our guests at the last meeting. Methodology is quite sound. Portsmouth is ranked number 5 in the state out of 55 ranked high schools. Tiverton is ranked 17, Middletown 20. And if you look at the methodology, it's based on college readiness, 30% of the ranking, college curriculum breadth, state assessment proficiency, state assessment performance, underserved student performance, and graduation rate. And so that metric is available for you on board docs and also on the back of this particular table. And so we do see that, these two assessments, evaluations, if you will, one performed by the independent educational consultant, Don Ribello, and also the one that US News and World Report analysts engage in each year are not, they really are not in conflict. They are complementary pieces of information to look at. The rubric and the self-report submitted by the 3 bidding districts have, a level of subjectivity, obviously. Every accreditation process does. And these particular data points, these output measures are absolutely objective. And so you as a body who will be making probably one of the most important decisions of your career as an elected official in Little Compton, you'll have, this data to look at. If we look at the first column there after the student diversity, and I thought the student diversity component was important, Middletown wins hands down there, and then Portsmouth, and then Tiverton. And I also did put student teacher ratios. Tiverton has more staff and teachers than any of the other high schools. They won there as well. But if we start looking at the data, the academic output measures, student achievement data, at Portsmouth High School, nearly 3/4 of graduating seniors sat for an AP exam, which means they took a very rigorous course. They elected to do so, and they had access to that. Less than half of Tiverton's graduating seniors engaged in advanced placement coursework. And at Middletown, 38% engaged in advanced placement coursework. The proportion of the 12th grade class who scored a 3 or above on an exam, 48% at Portsmouth, 30% at Tiverton, 26% in Middletown. Exam takers in 12th grade class who scored a 3 or above on the exam, 67%, 69% in Tiverton. However, fewer students took the exams in Tiverton, only less than half, where nearly 3/4 in Portsmouth access that coursework and those exams, and 68% at Middletown, but almost, a third access those there. So those are pretty telling data points. In terms of mathematics proficiency, we do want to see better proficiency rates across the state in every high school. And, we're definitely on track. We're mirroring MCAS and, in Massachusetts, but we're not quite there yet. But out of the 3 high schools, Portsmouth High has the highest mathematics proficiency rate, followed by Tiverton, and then Middletown, 57%, 45%, 39%. Reading proficiency, Portsmouth does quite well, 75%, Tiverton 66%, Middletown 61%. Science proficiency, Portsmouth is the highest, 63% proficiency rate, Tiverton at 46, Middletown at 23. The graduation rates are all relatively high and climbing. Middletown, I know Middletown, Tiverton, and I believe Portsmouth, they have increased theirs likely in the past few years, from what I'm hearing anecdotally. The last column is the column that most parents and guardians look at when they're thinking of their student, especially their college-bound student heading off to high school, but even students on other post-high school pathways, trades, military service, etc. They're looking at percentile score when it comes to the Scholastic Aptitude Test, the SAT. And Portsmouth knocks it out of the park with a 92.6 percentile score there. And, that's pretty high, top 10%, basically, in the nation. Tiverton is at 74.1 percentile and Middletown 66.7. So this, doesn't contravene the consultant's report in any way. It complements. It's additional information. I do believe the subcommittee has other data points that they want to capture, some stakeholder information via a survey. They've also requested stakeholder questions if they have them, and the subcommittee will gather those and answer them all at once, which I think is a really good idea. And maybe some site visits this summer to look at facilities, grounds, and ask questions, pointed questions of those giving those site visits. And this isn't as long as the last meeting. Don and I and the chair of that committee and Hannah, we went into more detail, et cetera, et cetera. A nice primer on the first step of the process that you 5 will be engaging in. And that's it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Rebello while he's here?
I don't think Travis was at the other meeting.
Yeah, no, he did beautiful.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Good time, Don.
Thank you so much.
I know it's paid, but thank you.
I'll be in touch and have a wonderful family.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know your way up right now.
Well, I might wander around a little bit, but I'll find it.
Okay, I'm gonna take you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you folks.
Thank you.
Excellent work, Don.
Thank you, Don.
Excellent.
What? Yeah,
Do you have that slide ready for the email address?
You may want to point me in the right direction.
Yes, it's like a maze. All right, do you want me to drop this in the pocket?
and I would like to comment, I know you guys mentioned it in the subcommittee, but I think all along, our plan is before our vote to have a just for the purpose of discussion too. I mean, our former chair discussed it, and I think, if we didn't do one, we would be going against all historical data points, but I also think it's a good idea to open up the gym, have a public meeting once all the data's been gathered and everything that we need.
Sure, I have no problems doing that. So, okay, all right, there we go. So in between the last meeting, the subcommittee meeting and this meeting, Jonathan was able to put together a email address that any questions for the high school contract process, that we ask everybody use this email address that's up on the screen. We are going to collect all the questions and we are going to hold them. We're going to answer them all at once. We will acknowledge that you have sent them, but we will reply all at once. Thank you.
And one little side note, if you already emailed Mariah directly, I think as we mentioned in the last meeting, we will still get both of them, or feel free to resend it to that new email. Either way, that'll be counted.
Thank you.
All right.
So can we, Madam Chair, can we maybe send this email that Jonathan, sort of like through ParentsWare or whatever to,
Push it out.
yeah, it's just some, yeah, everybody's on the same page. I
Sure.
know what you said about Mariah, but nonetheless.
Yeah, we're gonna, no more questions? Any questions? All right. Any questions anywhere? No. Moving on to 5, Spotlight. Mr. McKinnon, would you like to give us an end of year activities update?
Absolutely. I'll try to make this as quick as possible. So the last couple of weeks has been extremely busy here at Wilburn McMahon School. June 2nd through the 6th, we had our first musical of the year, Matilda, under the direction of Miss Nicole Oriole. Just looking at the musical, every time over the 3 days of the shows, one progressively got better, particularly with the technical difficulties that I'm sure you go through with the first. Last week, we had our 4th through 8th grade band and chorus concert. It's the first time that our students performed in front of a live audience in 2 years. Went off extremely well. Kids were certainly very proud of themselves. This past Monday night, our 8th graders had their dinner dance at the Secana Point Club at 6 o'clock. It's an opportunity for our kids to get dressed up, the girls in dresses and beautiful shoes, and the boys in shirts and ties. I was saying to Miss Lotz earlier that, you know, for some of these kids, it's their first time at a dance, because for the past 2 years, they've lost those opportunities. So there was an initial pause, particularly on the boys' part, for getting up and dancing. But as the night wore on, they did. Brave souls got up there and danced, and they had a wonderful night. Yesterday was our field day. It was probably a top 10 day in terms of the weather. Low humidity, probably mid-70s. The students were treated to hot dogs and hamburgers from Chotwell's. We had graduates of Portsmouth High School and Portsmouth Abbey assist us with running the events. It was a huge plus. It's a great opportunity for them to kind of give back to their community and give back to the school that where it all started. So that was a nice little thing. Same day, our 8th graders were down at the beach. It was normally the day that they would go to Canopy Lake Park. But based on some financial concerns that we had, the cost of traveling to, I believe it's Salem, New Hampshire, was somewhat astronomical. And according to one teacher, after the event yesterday, the kids had an absolute fantastic time and literally 3 miles from the school. So that was a great opportunity. Tomorrow night, we have our 8th grade graduation, 6 o'clock sharp, right outside the Josephine Wilbur entryway. The Little Compton Police Department will shut down the north side of the Commons at around 5 o'clock, 5:30. They didn't give us an actual time. Each family has a set of 4 reserved seats on the grass. Families are welcome to bring as many as they would like, and some lawn chairs, and they're welcome to use the top of the triangle on Pikes Peak as well. Our 7th grade parents are putting together a little after graduation light refreshments. So that'll add a nice little touch to this community event that I know people certainly look forward to. Without saying, I need to shout out a couple of people for their work, particularly Mary Elizabeth Miller, our school social worker, and Mike DeLeo, who are the co-advisors of the 8th grade class, putting all these things together so that they could have what was really a realistic end of the school year opportunity. I mean, they did miss out on some things. We're hoping to bring, particularly the Washington trip back next year, but they certainly had a lot of great opportunities towards the tail end of the year. Jason Ford and Noel Kiernan for their preparation for field day. I don't think people realize how much effort goes into that, but to organize, 200 kids to move in a choreographed fashion is quite a lot, and we certainly appreciate that. Obviously, at Portsmouth High School graduates and former WMS students who came and helped out. The Good Friend family, which is donating the flowers to tomorrow night's 8th grade graduation. We certainly appreciate it. And finally, as usual, the unsung heroes, our custodial staff, for, being able to move things around in a timely fashion so that kids could enjoy the different events that took place. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like a fun time.
Fun time.
6, the superintendent's report. Update on the 21-22 school year, school safety.
Oh, yes. I just want to say, field day was safe, just a few bumps and scrapes. Mr. McKinnon and I did dole out the food. We got to work the food line and that was a lot of fun. And the 8th graders and 7th graders, it was just a beautiful evening and what a gorgeous view. And it was truly a treat to be out after 2 years of doing everything on site or virtually. School safety update. I have to say that Wilbur McMahon School is safer than it has ever been. What happened in Uvalde, Texas is still top of mind. And but the safety upgrades from a few years ago, nearly $500,000, which I cannot share publicly, are absolutely state of the art and don't ensure safety, but maximize it and optimize it. Absolutely. There's always more work to do. We did those upgrades a few years ago. There's always more to do. And each year we do meet as an emergency response team. And this year we met 3 times, most recently last week. Most districts meet once. We've met 3 times. And we looked at the all hazard site safety report that we submitted in the fall. And as a team, we, including the 2 chiefs, guest Mike Rocha, Chair Holly Allen, head custodian, also IT director, and Jonathan Gabriel, Carolyn Sedgwick, HR person, staff safety is also top of mind. We generated a list of tweaks and updates and upgrades that we would like to actuate and apply for additional monies to use in parallel with the monies that we are seeking. And John McNamee will have something for you to sign here, but we will sort of fold in these safety enhancements with our 5 to 10 year capital improvement plan that outlines nearly $5 million in upgrades over the long term. And so we took a lot of input from the stakeholders on that team and also those professionals from the safety complex. We also collaborated with the safety complex this week in testing our communications systems. Can't go into detail about. And those are all up to date. And we thank the police, most specifically Chief Raines, for ensuring that we have everything that we need. We also collaborated with police and fire on various safety bills the past few weeks. We would have been doing most of those anyway. They are a requirement of the state. But there was a particular earnestness and intention unlike anything, any of the drills that we've conducted this past year. We always conduct drills that are successful and we get a thumbs up from the chiefs, but these had much more impact. And were much more serious in nature and did give the parents and guardians a heads up that we would be, we didn't want them panicking. We didn't want their children panicking. And I think everything went quite well. McKinnon would agree.
Mhm.
And I'll just reiterate that the school is safer than it has ever been. It is never enough. And we will continue to circle back and tweak and upgrade and update until, there are no more updates to do. And that's it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on school safety?
I have a question, and I don't know if, I guess this kind of applies, but I'm just curious about what the mental health impact of these drills are and what kind of support is there for students, especially in the wake of the tragedy we saw in Texas. And then to immediately follow up with that with lockdown and evacuation drills, what was the mental health component following all of those events?
It is difficult to balance, but I think we achieved it. And by happenstance, it wasn't by design, but more by accident. I did include in one of my reports that in April, Principal McKinnon and our social worker, guidance counselor, Mary Elizabeth Miller, and crackerjack clinician, met with every grade about safety and even used a children's story. I'm not scared, I'm prepared, and to sort of contextualize these potentially traumatizing drills that we engage in. And so they continued those conversations, and our classroom teachers are so sensitive and caring. Many of them shed some tears. I was outside the next day after the Uvalde massacre, and we had teachers coming in weeping. And they knew how their words, their demeanor, how impactful they would be the next few days. And they knew we were also going to engage in drills and those drills would have a different tenor. And I'll let Principal McKinnon talk a little bit, but
And I think it's fair to say, as Dr. Mitchell talked about, reaching out to particularly the lower grades with that book, I'm Not Scared, I'm Prepared. That did prepare them for, our evacuation. During that time period I believe it was early April, we actually practiced with the K1s and 2s about evacuating the building. And that went along very well. I think it's fair to say that parents, there's two types of parents after Uvalde who, some want their students to know everything. Some parents do not want their students to be shielded from, what took place. So I think with our younger grades, having the evacuation a week ago, there was they're used to it. They practiced it, they were ready for it. I think with our older grades, I think they understood the significance of, running the drill. But again, there were no issues. Miss Miller, Mr. Julio, Miss Brackett, our school psychologist, Miss Sunderland, they are always available for students if in the event that a student has a concern or a question. Again, constantly working on that.
Anyone else?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't read the book to them, but we did.
right,
We did visit the upper grades too, as
we
Dr.
didn't read the book though.
They just didn't get the book.
That's good, just because I feel like in the wake of that specific, like personally, I think back to my time as a student, and I don't know if I can confidently say this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I might be the only one sitting here who participated in lockdown drills as a student. And I can remember that those were
Correct.
traumatic even as a 16-year-old in high school was very aware of world events and things like that. So I think it's important we have to practice these things obviously, but to keep the mental health aspect of it strong. And I'm very confident in the people we have here doing that.
If I may, I think we're still, I'm good, right?
Yeah.
I did tell Jack McKinnon that I can't stand the shaking of the doors. No children are in there.
That's what is in my mind.
Absolutely.
That's scary.
Traumatizing. It was traumatizing to me as an educator. It was traumatizing to me as an administrator.
Mhm.
It still is. And we did talk about that. And I was locked alone in my little place underneath there. And it was a gentle sort of, I made that clear that we cannot be doing that to kids. Every school does it.
Mhm.
We need to be the school that doesn't do that. He agreed.
Thank you.
6.2, International Baccalaureate Years Program update. Just gonna
I guess I
throw
could
in the spot.
introduce it, yeah. Last week, so let's see here, Monday and Tuesday, the 6th and 7th of last week, Nicole Jones was on site. She is the same IB consultant who flew up a few years ago. It seems like literally decades ago. And so this was her second site visit. She'll do a third this fall. And I met with her on the Monday morning. And it was a really good meeting. We had our documentation up, kind of like tonight. And I have to thank Jonathan for that. Jonathan Gabriel also showed our new launching pad, AKA website, that is no longer textual, text-based. It's more graphical content, graphics-based, and took her through the entire planning process. It's their rubric that we had to complete. I did pieces of it. The IB coordinator, Amy Lotz, did most of it. And Jack and Mary Elizabeth Miller and just about every middle school teacher did have input. It was a wonderful visit from my perspective. But obviously consultants are different with superintendents than they are with faculty and kids and principals and so forth. And so then that's when I bowed out and the process unfolded Monday afternoon and Tuesday as well. I have to say, I'm hoping that we have your calendar, your agenda for those 2 days, if we have it available to go up. Only because you did such a great job in incorporating stakeholders from the SIT team, students from the middle school, and staff members into the process. And that's it. My meeting was the shortest with her, about an hour and a half or so. And then the building took it away from there. Amy has been an excellent coordinator. She has given me a lot of homework and I think I got an A on it. But I did cram. But thank you for all you've done. I cannot thank you enough. This program is a perfect fit for this village school. And you and Jack McKinnon have taken that ball and you not only ran with it, you sprinted with it. So that's all I have.
Great. Thank you. So as Superintendent Dice Mitchell said, we had our visit on June 6th and 7th. Sean, I just shared with you the agenda. If you want to get that and put it up. But basically it was a very good visit for more than one reason. Mostly because it put a face to someone that I had just been speaking with. It was nice to meet this person face to face and have a conversation. But backing up, before we get to the visit, I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I didn't update you on going down to Florida for the Florida International IB Schools. It's a very large convention, almost 700 educators. And we went down and it was a really wonderful experience that gave me a much deeper understanding of the program itself and all of the reasons why we are a good fit. And fast forward to our visit, it just kind of confirmed those feelings that we were already having, the conversations that we had after returning from Florida. So the update, so Nicole Jones, the intention of her visit was to come and check in with us and see the progress that we had made on what Ivy refers to as an action plan. And the action plan is comprised of, give or take, 50 or so standards and practices that encompass the entire IB framework. Each one of those standards and practices becomes an action item on our action plan. And the action plan, that was the homework that you were referring to, is it is one working document where IB asks for documentation and what we are doing to meet those requirements of each philosophy. So for example, one of the action items is that some are simple and some are more complex. Some are simple policies that we have in place just by way of being a school that supports and really emphasizes like 504s and IEPs and the special needs policies, all the policies that we need to have. Some are those easier action items that we can just cross right off. Some are more complex. And those are the ones that we need to collaborate on the teacher level and make some sort of program. Make these types of programs that IB requires and make it work here for us. So that's kind of where we are now. To give you some specifics, Nicole does not, unfortunately, for this first visit, the IB does not give, we don't have written feedback yet from our visit. Nicole gives us verbal feedback. I took all of the notes that I could, and then she has already submitted her report to the IB organization. They review it, and it should be about 2 months or so, and we get their official final report. From that report, we will consult with Nicole again about the specific items that need more work. And luckily in her just verbal exit meeting that we had with her Tuesday afternoon, we already know what's going to be in that report. So I don't suspect any large surprises. So the other good thing, it's all good. IB is a wonderful program, but so not to say it like that, but another, thing that we really have going for us is that her comment that kind of echoed through her visit was that Wilbur, all grades, it seems like K through 8, based on the projects that we do, the inquiry-based learning, we are intrinsically already implementing a lot of facets of IB.
Yes.
It seems like we have been for a very long time. So in that aspect, we are good. We don't need to change a lot within our classrooms when it comes to our curriculum. The curriculums really align well with the principles and philosophies. We have activities, we have community push in and we push out, beach cleanups, food drives. Like there's a lot of things that we just do here as a school anyway. And then there are some pieces that we have work to do. And so that's what we're focusing on going forward. And those are the types of things that need to include classroom teachers and students themselves. Some of those items to look forward to that we'll be working on early next year is that one of the things that IB strives for is a unified communication with parents, stakeholders, students, teachers, everybody that is involved in that student's education. They really, communication is a big key part of that, clear communication. One of the requirements that we are working towards is a unified syllabus for the MYP, which is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, so that students entering 6th grade know how they will be assessed through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade all at once. So that is something that we are meeting with the SIT team over the summer to start formulating that. And I've also asked for some teacher input to see, their suggestions, what's gone well for them in regards to the weight of homework versus quizzes versus classwork versus projects and that sort of thing. Also, late policies and the criteria on which they will be assessed for IB standards. That is something that we will work on with the SIT team. And that is all part of something that they call the subject group overview, which is essentially, for those familiar with our curriculum, is the scope and sequence essentially. And it's just a way of, facilitating a document where all teachers can look at and work from together in collaboration, so that if gym class is teaching their lesson on sustainable food and nutrition, then maybe that's when the EL curriculum will tackle their Omnivore's Dilemma book, and where I'll start tying in my Spanish vocabulary, my Spanish lesson on food and culture within, within families and eating habits. So it just is a way to facilitate, again, that open communication piece. So that is a big part of it. We need to work on our language policy. Coming into this program, I just looked at language policy as being, the school teaches another language other than English, so we must be all set, and we expect the kids not to swear. That's really what I thought going into IB, what the language policy is. It is so much more than that, obviously. And that is something that we're going to work on, and it's the idea that all teachers are language teachers, and that language really matters. So IB has, aside from the learner profile and their approaches to learning, they have a glossary of terms that are command terms, essentially, that teachers will use throughout 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. A lot of them we're already using now. They're just really, they're action words. So we're examining, we are describing, we are reflecting. All of the things we already do, we're just going to wrap all of those things up into a policy and maybe tweak it where we see areas for growth. Let's see, what else do we need? We have, as you had mentioned before, we have a plan for the website, and within that website is going to be an IB specific portal where we will have information for students and for parents and for teachers on any IB information that's needed, specifically coming into the 8th grade year when there's an 8th grade community project that we will pilot next year. Right after 8th grade finishes their Rhode Island State Science Fair, we will go from that right into our community project, which carries them right through graduation. And there's a very specific process for that, and that will all be shared with parents and community members on the website as well. Let's see, there were a few other. Oh yes, so the academic integrity and honesty policy, we have a very strong one at this school already. It needs a little bit of tweaking to incorporate more IB philosophy and language. And then once we have that formulated, then we go to the teachers and make sure that we are all on the same page. We are all laying things out in the same way so that students, teachers, parents, everybody knows what to expect. Some of the feedback I heard from teachers about that, especially from the special ed department, is that they are thrilled that there's going to be a unified way of assessing students in regards to, okay, homework is worth this amount, and we can't revise below whatever score is decided upon. We have to work on these policies, but it's almost a relief to teachers from what I hear that there will be just a set method. So it's not, it just takes the guesswork out for the students and for those that push in and for parents trying to keep up with 4 different teachers, classroom standards. So it makes a lot of sense. And it's something that most schools, I think that most schools have a similar process. We're just K through 8, so we are in a little bit of a different situation. Let's see. I believe that is everything that I wanted to share about the visit. I welcome any questions, clarification. I know I spoke very quickly. Just wanted to get it all out there. Overall, a really great visit, positive feedback. It was really nice to hear that we are intrinsically implementing a lot of things. So we don't have to take our school and flip it over and, start from scratch. We're there. We just need to build in a few more things. One of the things I'm sharing with the teachers and myself as a teacher as well, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just taking a wheel that spins pretty well and we're just adding more to it. So it's a little bit smoother. And that's the preface of the entire philosophy behind that date.
Thank you. A lot of good, exciting stuff going on.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions?
I just have one question. Could you remind me again when we would officially have that, like, we're in IB school title?
Yes, so that is a little bit of a gray area because we are given a certain window of time to implement any changes that may come with the feedback that we have. Luckily for us, we know what needs to be worked on, and it's essentially policies. Or, within the school itself, I'm thinking that I don't know exactly when we would be, but as soon as we get our report, I guess it all weighs on when the report comes in and when we need to finalize everything by, but we don't at this point have a set date that as of October 1st, we will be authorized, but I believe it's supposed to be in the fall of 2022.
But it could happen, like the school year can start basically, like we don't have to start the school year with this as a plan, and it can happen mid-year if it needed to, or.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have flexibility with when it can actually happen, because once we receive the official feedback, we have an amount of time to implement those changes. And then it has to be just reviewed one last time before you're given that official stamp.
And that's the third visit when she'll come back.
She will come, they don't typically always come back for the
Okay.
third visit. If there were a lot of changes that need to be implemented, maybe, but I think in our case, I'm not anticipating a third in-person visit.
Okay.
We have budgeted for it just in case, entitled to the federal grant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy.
It's happening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
6.3, human resources update.
That is Carolyn's.
All right, thank you, Chair Allen. We have, I'll make it very, very brief. We have interviews ongoing for the grade 7-8 math teacher position. Principal McKinnon and I were busy with that today. We have some open positions on School Spring, including the grade 5 ELA social studies teacher position and the .4 technology teacher 1-year position. Those are 2 openings that will remain open. They're external postings at this point until June 20th. So that's it from the HR department.
Thank you. 7, finance report. Mr. McNamee?
Thank you. So today, we got notification that the House, on the House passed budget, that there would be an increase in state aid of about $16,000 for Little Compton, which is good. I'm assuming we'll have to wait for that Senate approval. But I'm anticipating that will be some found money for us for, I think, it 432, and I think they came up at 448. So that'll be a positive going into next year. And of course, we do have budgeted healthcare in there, which I think we had around 5 or 6% increase, and that'll be significantly less than that. So looks like we'll be starting off 23 on a very positive note. As far as 22 goes, it looks like we're still going to be somewhere around, we'll have a surplus, a small surplus. We do have some monies that will be coming in from the Newport County Regional for some built up fund balance over there, so that will be added to our income for this year, but we're hoping that we'll transfer that over to capital and use that to kind of jumpstart our 5-year program. You have the ride approvals on a ride, and you've got both Little Compton and Lincoln's approvals, and we do have some pay-go money that RIDE is allocating to us, so that money is monies that when bills come in, we'll send them down to RIDE, they pay them, so it's a jump start from a cash flow standpoint. So we're hoping to put together a project somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 to 750. I probably want to incorporate in the parking lot that the town is hoping to get done probably in the spring, because we'll be able to get a housing aid on that, or at least the town would be able to get it. And right now, I'm trying to work a deal where that housing aid can go. But still negotiating with Tony on that one.
Good luck.
I think we'll have some portion of that. So that'll be a project, an ongoing project for. So as far as any of the additional expenses, we did pay the last teacher payroll last week. And that was the 5 payrolls. So at the next meeting, I'll have a better handle on what we'll end the year with in terms of salary expenses. But at this point, it does look like we'll be in the positive from a income standpoint for FY22.
Excellent, thank you. Good news all around. Anyone have any questions for Mr. McNamee? All right. 8, committee reports. Policy subcommittee. Sounds like we might have some stuff coming our way soon, Hannah, but we don't have anything today, so. School committee liaison report, Hannah?
Thank you. I attended Portsmouth's school committee meeting on Tuesday, June 7th. Basically, they're wrapping up the school year. Last week, seniors had their senior week and graduation, which some of us were able to attend. I want to point out and congratulate the 8 seniors from the class of 2022 that have been accepted and will be attending military academies. It's an unprecedented amount of seniors from one class to have been accepted to prestigious military academies. So congratulations to those 8 students and good luck, and thank you for your future service to our country. They also appointed their new principal for Portsmouth High School, Dr. Rial. I apologize if that's the mispronunciation, but she is been in leadership positions throughout K-8 and in high school for her career. So they look forward to welcoming her in July. And the girls lacrosse team are their district state champs this year. So congratulations to them as well. And I probably won't get many updates from the actual high school over the summer months, but I met the 2 new seniors from the student council who come and do the liaison report from their side. And so it's going to be great to see them and work with them next summer or next school year. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Hannah. Next up, town recreation committee liaison.
Yes. We've been meeting regularly. Sad to report that we did not receive the grant monies to restore the tennis courts and lights. Yeah. So the town still may have a little money to do a little repair work, but not the big project we were hoping for. So not this time. But everything else is pretty much status quo. And I'll just go to the wellness.
Sure.
Okay, our next meeting is September 27th, again, encouraging people to support the Wellness Committee.
You're also the scholarship committee, aren't you?
Oh, yes, that's me too. Yay. I have been busy. We are meeting. Tell me when, next week.
21st.
21st, we are meeting. So
Excellent.
all of the applications are in, they've been reviewed by our secretary, and then we're gonna get together and have a good discussion.
Awesome, great. We're gonna skip 9.1, we already did it. And head to 9.2.
Hey, thank you so much.
Oh, okay, I was gonna introduce you, but I thought you were gonna take it away. Go ahead.
Every now, there's no such thing as a free lunch, but there have been free lunches, obviously, the past few years. And I wish we could perpetuate that. Maybe we'll find a way in the future. But school districts throughout the state did get some surprising news that we were going to receive funding for the arts. The concern right now throughout the state of Rhode Island is the marginalization of the arts, the fine and performing arts. And so it's good to know that the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education took that feedback very seriously from art educators, music educators, et cetera. And Little Compton, it's likely based on enrollment, we have 10 grand. We can spend it, and it isn't, we don't have to match it. It's not, so John will be talking about in the future, and I will be too, about some matching funds coming down the pike for furnishings and so on and so forth. This is an entitlement grant. We love it when they come. And it can be spent on, let's see, school improvements that can promote the arts, encouraging development of creative work by students to enhance interdisciplinary learning, brain function, well-being, and mental health. The scope of this initiative includes projects that enhance culinary arts, performing arts, visual arts, music, and design to ensure that learning spaces are used optimally. The grantee can use funding to purchase items such as musical instruments, auditorium upgrades. We're good there. We have a goodly amount for that. Thank you, Little Compton and School Committee. Artists in residence, murals, sculptures, professional development, individual sponsorships, audiovisual or culinary equipment, and other investments that help provide high-quality arts education. We haven't decided how to spend it. I will be meeting with Mr. McKinnon, and we'll map out just how to use this wonderful financial resource to promote the arts. The school does a wonderful job already, but there are areas that we definitely would like to boost. And thank you, State of Rhode Island, for this. So you do have to sign it. It's an MOA. There, like I said, there's no matching funds, there's no obligation, but all 5 of you do have to sign it. It's sent to the Town of Little Compton and the Little Compton Public School Committee. You are the grantee.
Great, thank you.
Right. I know, that was a happy surprise.
Public input. Does anyone have any public input?
Madam Chair, if the public doesn't have anything to say, I'd like to share something.
Sure.
So Duke is in pre-K, and last week we did a little, Mrs. Smith and Miss Carla, they do a beautiful job down there.
Oh,
And they did, that parents came in, they did a little celebration, and awesome. But what really blew me away is we're walking out, they always finish up on the playground. And as we're walking out, I mean, maybe they were 3rd, 4th, 5th, I don't know. But one of the boys sees their pre-K. And he's like, yeah, pre-K. And all the kids clapped as these little guys and gals were walking out. And I mean, that's like that culture you can't really teach. And to have that kind of buy-in from young people. I mean, they were 10 and under. Teacher was there, she saw, but it made these little guys and gals like beam that the big kids recognized them, were cheering them on. So that's the kind of stuff that you can't get everywhere. So I want to recognize it when it does happen. I wish I could point the kid out, but it was awesome.
You're gonna make me tear.
Yeah, as a father, it was awesome.
Now,
Really cool.
yeah, well, that was just, and I want to follow up with Monday night. I mean, it's so funny, I've worked in middle schools and high schools my entire, 10 years on the college level, but middle schools and high schools during my K-12 life. And in middle school, at middle school dances, it's the adults who get the kids out, and in high school, it's the kids who get the adults on the dance floor. And so I was one of the adults who got the kids on the dance floor, and hopefully none of it is on tape. And then I said, okay, this is when I leave, and I left. And the next day, yesterday, Jack said, Lori, every single student by the end of the night, all of those seventh graders who were shy, all of those eighth grade, they 100%, they were on that dance floor. But I have to say, they were so polite, well-behaved. During their meal, they were so gracious and grateful to all the staff who attended. It was just, and add to that yesterday's wonderful, with music blasting, the last song, a field day yesterday was closing time. It was just so perfect. And aside from the tick sightings and so forth, and that's why you all got that weird email last night. But thank you for bringing that up, because the kids here are so kind, caring, loving, generous, inclusive, overwhelmingly. And it's really nice. And maybe it's because it's
Good
close.
work. I'm just saying, good work. I mean,
It's just,
there's no way.
the parents.
You couldn't have planned it better. It was awesome.
It's just the nicest.
It was
kids.
really
We
great.
weren't like, oh, we got Mr.
No,
Harden.
it was awesome. Man. It
Someone
was
did
awesome.
something awesome.
Wonderful week, in spite of all the sadness and violence. It has been here in our little corner of the village. I'm just,
Fortunate.
yeah.
Can I add
Blessing.
Sure.
just to, I mean,
It's a good story.
yes,
All right.
they are very, these students are very generous and kind. And I think another example of that is how grateful they are to all of you as their teachers, their staff, their principals. And I think you saw that at the award ceremony with who they dedicated their yearbook to,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon, Mr. Tomaso, Mr. DeLeo, and Mrs. Turca, all people who have always, I think, gone above and beyond to make sure the students are having fun, especially in that eighth grade year. Mr. DeLeo, Mr. Tomaso, I mean, they were there for me. They were there for years and years doing all that. So I think it's good on them to recognize the people
That was super.
make all that happen for them. And so I think that just another example of the
That is-
gratitude and the kindness that comes from these kids. It's great.
That was a super sweet moment that they could not choose.
Yeah.
They could not choose. So they chose 4. It was really sweet. This is a wonderful last school committee meeting of the 2022 school year.
All right, so let's move on to some action items. 11.1, consider, discuss, and vote to approve school committee confidential secretary contract. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries unanimously. 11.2, consider, discuss, and vote to appoint school committee confidential secretary. Consider a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, not hearing any. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to welcome our new school committee confidential secretary, Jennifer Sylvia. Thank you. 11.3, consider, discuss, and vote to approve any requests for information from administration and or legal counsel.
I have a question, and I don't know. Could be a yes or no. Do we have an ongoing verification process of residency? Do we have a policy that we check other than when students initially enroll?
Jack and I could both answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this ongoing residency checks. I've been involved in a few and had to make some phone calls to homes. Never like to do that. And then we ask for proof of residency. We triangulate. We ask for 3 specific pieces of information. And in my 4 years here, it's gone on maybe twice, and each family did provide the requisite documentation. But yes, and we also use the police department to do checks as well.
I also get flagged on the data management side.
Yep.
If there's any discrepancies, if somebody
Absolutely.
should be reported as enrolled in another district, but it's still, we're still reporting attendance to them here, that kind of thing. That does come up.
Yeah, I guess just the question is if it's done on a regular basis.
Mhm.
So it's not targeting anybody, like, is it done on an annual thing, or is it just as it
At point,
appears?
as it appears, at point of need, we may get a report. A few teachers reported discrepancies and so forth. It's never, a negative or malicious, impulse on any stakeholder's part. But we all know that fraudulent, residency is an issue in every district. And my office does investigate it at least once a year, even in the tiny village. But sometimes the family they were in the process of moving, there's sometimes extenuating circumstances.
Okay.
We're pretty tough on it.
Before we vote to adjourn, I would like to thank Mariah. This is her last regular meeting. And I don't even know you've been wonderful. You've just supplied so much support. You're like my memory or my note taker. You remind me of everything I have forgotten politely and kindly, without any judgment or
Thank you for your
harassment.
patience and kindness,
Yes.
Mariah. She's very good at like a gentle nudge. See, it's been 10 days, Travis.
Right. We really appreciate you. We're going to miss you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would speak.
And also, before we adjourn, don't leave without signing whatever Mariah needs you to sign.
Yes.
Okay?
So Jack and his staff can strategize on boosting the arts.
And I would consider a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?